Hey, I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex. I recently spent 4 days at GAMA Expo in Louisville, Kentucky, checking out a bunch of new games. I was lucky enough to be one of the hosted media there at GAMA Expo. And if you don't know what GAMA Expo is, it is the sort of trade show for the board game industry. It is a bunch of publishers, a bunch of retail stores, a bunch of media people, a bunch of creators, all of that sort of stuff, getting a chance to check out games. And a lot of the games featured there are upcoming games from publishers. There were, game nights and media first look events and things like that where I got to see a lot of great upcoming games. And so I'm going to run through, a little more than 10 of the great games that I saw there, and I'll break it down into categories and give out awards, they're not getting anything for these awards. These are fake awards from Grant's Game Rex. But you can feel proud of yourself. If you won an award, you should feel proud of yourself, okay? Because they're great games. But I just like to do it like this because it really helps me break down and talk about the games and, think of these sort of like first look awards. A lot of these games I had a chance to play maybe one full game, maybe just sit down and demo half of a game, something like that. So these are sort of first impression awards. But I'm excited for all these games coming out, and I hope you are too. The best family game I saw was Gateway Island from Van Ryder Games. This is actually a game made up of 21 mini games that all teach a major board game mechanism, which I think is great for a bunch of families, for a bunch of people getting into this. There's going to be a little mini game on worker placement, one on deck building, one on area control. Board gamers, we all talk about all of these things pretty easily, right? We just sort of mention stuff. We throw out these things and expect people to know what they are. But I'm reminded of that on like my TikTok channel where I'm like, oh, this is my favorite new worker placement game. And someone's always like, what's worker placement? There's a lot of people that don't know what that sort of stuff are. And so I think this game is going to be a great way to introduce people into the different types of board games that are out there. And, it's one of those things where I think that's a great way to sort of guide your board game journey. You get to try all of these little mini games and go, oh, I like this one, I don't like that one. It's like a wine tasting, but for board games, right? I don't know that much about wine, but I've been wine tasting, so I know I like that kind better than I like that kind. I can't tell you why. That one tastes better to me, and that one doesn't. And this is kind of like that for board games, right? You're going to go, oh, I like that mechanism. That was really fun. And this one can kick rocks, No, get out of here, that mechanism. And so I think it's just a great family game to introduce people, introduce newer gamers into sort of the concepts of different board game mechanisms. This one should be coming out around August. The top two-player game I saw there was Boop the Halls from Smirk and Dagger. There was a game that came out a few years ago called Boop, and then there was one that came out last year called Boop, and now this is the third game in the Boop line. All three of the games share the sort of basic central mechanisms of the game. It is an abstract two-player game where you are putting kittens and cats on a board and then booping ones that are next to the one you placed away from them. And if you can get 3 of your cats lined up in a row, you win the game. Well, Boop, wildly popular game. Boop was a Halloween version of the game Boop, but it really didn't change much about the game. There was a little ghost cat you added in that sort of moved across the board and forced things away, but, it was sort of 95% the same as the base game. It just had sort of Halloween artwork and things like that. Well, Boop the Halls is more of a departure. The central mechanisms still the same. You are still placing things, booping things away, but now there is a new win condition in the game, which I think is cool. There are ornaments that are now on the board, and so when you place down, the ornaments get bumped away as well. And if you can knock off 3 ornaments from your opponent, you collect them, you win the game that way. So you can win both by lining up 3 of your cats or by booping the other a person's ornaments off of the tree. And speaking of tree, there is a three-dimensionality to this board, so it adds a little bit of layers to the puzzle. It looks like a Christmas tree. That's the whole idea, is that, you know, there is going to be layers to it like a tree, sort of tapering up to the top. So when you are booping, you can boop down different levels, you can boop off of the tree, and so, you know, it does feel similar to boop, but it feels more different than the Halloween version did. And if you haven't guessed by now, this is the Christmas version of the Boop game, and it's going to be coming out sometime in the fall. So if you're a fan of Boop, this Christmas version is what I'm very much excited for. The best cooperative game I saw was Invincible Hero Building Game from Direwolf. This is a game based on the Invincible IP. We're seeing a few different games based on that IP these days. Skybound had a really fun, hidden role version of an Invincible game. Well, this is a bag building cooperative game. You are going to be pulling cubes from the bag, and different colors of cubes are going to allow you to do different actions, and you are working together to build up your hero and defeat the bad guys. But then you can also sort of get different cubes to add back into the bag, and you can really specialize. You can, go for a certain color so that your character is very good at a certain thing. You can decide how you want to build your bag and what sort of actions you want to put into the bag with the color cubes you're adding into it. Bag building is one of my favorite mechanisms because it just, there's real strategy and choices of which path do you want to go to, what do you want to specialize in, but still that just exciting moment of like reach into the bag, let's hope I get what I need, nobody knows. I love that tension that exists in bag building games, and so that's one of the reasons I'm excited about this Invincible Hero Building game, because it's a fun IP, and it's bag building and working together to beat bad guys. This one should come out around June. The most innovative game I saw at GAMA Expo was 7 Impossible Things from Infinite Rabbit Holes. Infinite Rabbit Holes is really pushing the board game hobby into new and interesting directions because they're using augmented reality in their games. They're calling it mixed reality. But, it is a board game with board game elements, but then you use an iPad or an app to sort of look over the board game elements and virtual stuff pops up. And there's always cool surprises, there's always interesting things that are coming up. They had their first big game that came out was the Arkham Asylum files, I think came out last year. And one of the reasons I'm excited about this 7 Impossible Things is the Arkham Asylum files, really cool game, Batman theme, Harley Quinn is sort of leading you through the game, there's some story elements, there's a bunch of puzzles to solve, but it was like $150. It's not cheap for a lot of people to get. Well, 7 Impossible Things has that sort of same mixed reality to it, but this one is like a $50 price point. So it's a lot cheaper to get in, and you can still experience that cool stuff. Like, for instance, one of the things I saw was you put the iPad over this thing, and then this sort of card tower came up, and you're looking at a card tower. But if you look at the card tower through a certain perspective, you can see through the gaps in the cards into Alice in Wonderland's world. You're looking into another world through the cards, and oh man, it's sort of blow your mind, cool and unique and original. Obviously, I'm giving away that this is sort of an Alice in Wonderland theme, and it's still that escape room puzzle solving type of a game, right? There are going to be like 7 different puzzles to figure out, to piece the clues together to work through the story of 7 Impossible Things. But man, if you want to try some augmented reality in a game, it's really innovative, it's really different, it's really unique for the board game hobby, and I'm excited to see where they go with this sort of stuff. 7 Impossible Things should come out around July. The best small box game I saw was Ultimatch from Fireside Games. This is a small card game. It is cooperative as well, so I considered it for the cooperative category, but I'm putting it in here because it feels like, it's just a classic card game, but it's a fun puzzle to figure out. You have cards in a pyramid, and some of them are overlaying other ones, so you can't you have to remove the ones on top of the other ones to reveal new cards, but you are working together to get matches. You can remove a card by getting either a color or a number match, but if you can get both, if you can get color number matches all together, that's an Ultimatch, and then you get sort of special things. That's the only way you're going to draw new cards, and you burn through cards pretty fast in this, so you want to create those Ultimatches so that you can draw new cards and hopefully win the game. It's a game that plays in 15, 20 minutes, and I'll tell you, it's one I want to play again because I sat down and played a full game of this, and boy did we lose badly. We got crushed, and so I'm ready to play it again because I'm like, man, I gotta redeem myself. I gotta do better than that. There is a real cooperative nature to it because you can trade one card with another player at the start of your turn, but they can't tell you what they're giving you. So you're trying to piece together, okay, what could I give that could help somebody? This is the colors. If they can put these two things together, that might work well, and so you can talk vaguely, but you can't give specifics. And so yeah, it's just a fun cooperative small box card game. This is probably one that I want to, like I said, I want to play more, and I imagine it might make my top cooperative games of the year because I feel like it is going to be one of those addicting things where we're going to lose and we're going to go no, we got to play it right. We got to play it again right now. We got to beat this game. We can do it together. We got to focus. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get some matches. We're going to win Ultimatch. So Ultimatch should come out around June. So check it out. The best party game I saw was Things in Rings from All Play. This is a sort of a Venn diagram. There are these little rings out on the board, and one person plays as sort of the game host. I don't know, I'm sure they have an official term for it in the game. I don't know what that is. But each ring has a rule. So it's a little bit like 20 questions where you're trying to figure out what the rule is. And so one ring will have a rule that's sort of based on the word. Like, it's going to include spelling. It's going to include numbers of letters. It's a rule that's something like that. All the cards you put over there, everything needs to have an S in it or something like that. One of the rings might be like physical properties, like this is something that's made of wood. This is something that's bigger than a car, or like whatever it might be. And then the third ring, you have to figure out what it is, but it might be history related. It might be, something else. And so you are playing cards into rings. And the person who is leading the game, the host of the game, is telling you whether they are inside the circle or outside of the circle, or maybe they're even in the Venn diagram between circles. And so you are trying to deduce what the rule is, and you don't actually have to get the rule right because this is a competitive game, not a cooperative game. Whoever can get rid of the cards in their hand first wins the game. So, if you're like, I keep having luck putting stuff over here, I don't know what the rule is, but I'm going to keep putting cards over here, you might get lucky and sort of win the game without figuring out the rule. But mostly, you're going to have to figure out the rules in order to place your cards properly. And so, that motorcycle was great for filming, let me tell you. Is he coming back? He's coming. Are there two of them? We have a motorcycle gang outside? Oh, help me. Things in Rings. This circle is based on loud noises that interrupt filming. That's the rule for this circle, is loud noises that interrupt filming. But seriously, if you like that sort of 20 questions vibe where you're trying to deduce something, you're trying to figure out the rule for the different rings, it's fun to sort of, and it's a party game, so it plays very quickly and can play a lot of players. So Things in Rings comes out in May. The best theme of any game I saw there was BubbleNet from Dreyer Inc. I learned something cool that I've never heard of before because of this game. I love that board games have the power to educate us because there's so many games out there, people are picking unique, interesting themes, and you get to learn about something through those themes. So bubble netting is a thing where whales often just eat by lunging at schools of fish, and then they get what they get. But some whales have figured out this bubble net system where they blow bubbles in a spiral. They confuse a school of fish and get them to clump up in the middle, and then they just take one big chomp and they eat the entire school of fish instead of piecemealing, lunging, and grabbing whatever they can grab. What a cool thing, nature is wild for sure. And this game simulates that aspect of nature. There are fish in a ring and you are moving these bubbles around, pushing fish in, losing fish in other ways and stuff like that, and just trying to chomp the most fish. If you can chomp more fish than you lose by the end of the game, you win the game. And it's, a 15-minute game. It plays very quickly. And I love that it's a cool, unique theme I've never even heard of before. And another thing that I want to mention is Kat Dreyer was part of the Horizons Fellowship. So if you've never heard of that, that is a program through GAMA where they are supporting newer publishers and retail stores from historically underrepresented communities. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity. It's a really cool program. And so they're for the publisher side of things, it culminates at having a booth at GAMA. So if you are somebody that is designing games, if you are somebody that comes from a historically underrepresented background, if your company is 51% female owned or minority owned, something like that, then I really encourage you to apply for the Horizons Fellowship in the future because it's a cool way to get to GAMA and a cool way to have an introduction to the board game industry. I'll put a link to the program in the description of the video. And all of these people have really cool games and really interesting stuff, and I'm excited to see where they're all going. One of the Horizons Fellows from the first year has games in Barnes & Noble now, super cool to see the progress of different people like this, and so I wanted to shout that out. So check out the Horizons Fellowship if you ever get a chance to apply or to support the program. I encourage you to do so. But BubbleNet is definitely worth checking out. Again, it's like a 15-minute game with a cool theme, feels very unique. It will be crowdfunding later this year, so I will cover it more when it comes to crowdfunding because I think it's worth checking out for sure. The best production I saw there was High Five from Smirk and Dagger Games. There's a giant turntable in the game, wild. It's so cool. It's so cool. I'm a sucker for some awesome table presents. I can't even tell you that much about how this game is played. I honestly, this is one I got to demo a little bit, but I'm like, I was so blinded by the cool turntable and stuff like that. I don't know that much about the game. I'm sure I'll have more for you at some point, but from a production standpoint, it's awesome. I'm not somebody that owns a record player. I'm not a hipster despite this mustache making you think otherwise, but man, I just think it looks so cool on the table. You are turning the record player in the game, you're turning the rondelle and using that to get different actions in the game, and then building a music timeline with different tracks. You got a track for guitar, you got a track for vocals, all that sort of stuff. And so you're building out a song and trying to contribute to the B side of this track. If you're the one that contributes to the B side the best, you're going to win the game. And so, with the production stuff, it's like, yeah, there's obviously like games with amazing miniatures and stuff like that, but I want to highlight some other things for production, and this one just looks so cool. And oh man, what an awesome thing, having a big turntable on a game. I feel like this is another sort of theme that's going to pull people in. Like, you know people that like records. You for sure know people that like records. Have them play this game, man. They're going to be super impressed by the board game hobby right now. Hi-Fi is probably coming out around August. I also wanted to give an honorable mention here to the game Middle Ages from Studio H and Hachette. This is a re-implementation of the game Majesty for the Realm. Majesty for the Realm, a small box game where you were slotting the different types of cards into different slots on your board, and so you would have different types of cards would give you points and abilities in different ways. It's a really good game that someone introduced to me at a convention a few years ago. Well, this is the re-implementation of that. And so instead of cards, there are now tiles, and it's still the same thing where you have a board and different slots on there, and each of those slots is going to represent a different thing that has a different special ability and a different way to give you points. But now, instead of cards, they are tiles. And each of the tiles has a puzzle piece at the bottom of it that slots into the right spot on your board. Like this one has a little square, and this one has a couple of mountains, and this one has a wavy. And I don't know why that impressed me so much, but it did. It's so cool that each of them has their own specific spot, and then they can line up next to each other, and it's like you're putting a puzzle together with your board game. And I just think it's really cool. And so if you like puzzles, you should for sure check out Middle Ages when it comes out around May. The biggest surprise I saw there was Everbloom from Nerdvana Games. And this was partly a surprise because I don't know that much about Nerdvana Games. I didn't know that much before GAMA Expo. They are most well known for their RPG, Bunkers and Badasses, but I'm not an RPG player, so it's not something I've ever played or really knew that much about. And so they only have one other board game that's been out before. But let me tell you, this is one of the ones I am by far the most excited about from GAMA Expo. Everbloom is so cool. I had a chance to play through a full game of this, and if I was giving out an award for best artwork, this would win it, hands down. It looks so gorgeous on the table. The lore of the game is this is a world where there are hybrid creatures that are both flora and fauna. And so, you've got these lions with these flowers sprouting out of their mane and all these cool creatures that are sort of intermixing with the plants and flowers and stuff like that. It's just really, really striking and beautiful. And then even mechanism-wise, it's just a game that fits right into my wheelhouse. I love games that have interesting decisions, that have a lot of player interaction and play in 90 minutes or less, and that's what Everbloom does. So this is one that I'm like, oh yeah, I'm all on board for this because it's everything that I like in a board game. Each player has their own sort of asymmetric faction, and you are using these bidding tokens to bid on different spots on the board. And when you go to a spot, you can assign some of your pollinators to, there are paths, and so I'm going to this spot and I can assign pollinators to either of these two cards. And so you're trying to win these different things based on where you are putting your pollinators. But even losing to there are reasons you want to lose on a spot, because then you get to put some of your pollinators over on this other board, and that board will get you cool benefits as well. And so you are strategically thinking all the time on what you want to win, what you want to lose, where you're going to go, what you need to get. And then when you win cards, you're going to slot them into your board, and you're going to choose how those are going to score for you. And there's just again, a lot of player interaction. There's that constant okay, what are you going for? What do you want? How am I going to outsmart you? How am I going to be more clever than everybody else at the table? I'll tell you, I was not more clever than anybody else at the table. I got last place when I played this, and I still want to play it again, okay? I really want to play this one again. And so, yeah, again, it moves quickly, turns are pretty snappy. There's a lot of different interaction points in the game, and a lot of different sort of engine building and cool special abilities and stuff like that. I really like Everbloom. It's coming to crowdfunding probably in April, and then, hopefully will get released either late this year or early 2025 is probably more likely. But it's one I definitely think is worth checking out in crowdfunding. Everbloom is gorgeous, lots of player interaction, cool decisions, and plays in under 90 minutes. And now it's time for my last category, the best strategy games that I saw at GAMA Expo. And I could not pick here. It's so hard to pick one for these different categories. There's so many great games coming out all the time. I have trouble picking. And so I'm actually going to talk about 3 games right now because this is my video and I can do whatever I want. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is Canopy Evergreen from Weird City Games. A couple of years ago, Weird City Games released a small box card game called Canopy that I loved. It was one of the best 2-player games out there. You were drafting cards from piles, and so you would have to pick up a pile, look at it, decide whether you wanted that pile, and if not, you would then add a card to it, move on to the next pile. So it just was a really cool, interesting interaction where you're like, these are pretty good, but is that one going to be better? Do I want to make this one more valuable? I don't know. I really like that. It's one of those things that was like easy decision to wrap your head around, hard decision to make. And then you were drafting cards and getting points for growing trees and for comboing different animals together and stuff like that. 2-player only game, really. Well, Canopy Evergreen turns it into a 1 to 4 player game, so I'm happy that I can play this one with more people. And it keeps a lot of the same DNA as Canopy. There is still that same thing where there are 3 different piles, and you can look at a pile and either set it down and move on to the next pile and add a card to that first pile, or you can take that whole pile. But the things that it does differently, you're separating the animals out of the deck. And so you can buy animal cards and, sort of get what you want rather than just sort of randomly drawing something that helps you. You can buy the cards that you want. So that gives you a little bit more control over your strategy, which is nice. And now each player has a board as well. And so in the original Canopy, when you were building trees, you were just sort of laying cards on top of each other and making the tree taller. Well, now the trees are 3-dimensional. You are putting pieces of a tree onto another tree. And if you can move along the paths on your board, and when you get a tree on 2 different sides of a token, you now get that token, and it gives you a cool special thing that you have for the rest of the game. And so you can move along different paths, and that really helps your strategy as well. I think this game just sort of deepens the strategy, takes away a little bit of the luck element in the game Canopy. This makes the choices a little bit more juicy, things like that. And so if you like Canopy, I can almost guarantee that you're going to like Canopy Evergreen. It's another game that looks really great on the table too. All the artwork is very, very pretty. That one should come out around September, and it's one I'll be checking out for sure. Incredible Dream is releasing Kinfire Council. This one will be coming to Kickstarter around April, and then will definitely release in 2025. Incredible Dream is doing a really good job right now building this whole world of Din Lux. They've had a number of games now that are coming out that are all sort of set in the world, but all the games play differently. Different mechanisms, different things like that, but sort of the same lore behind them. Kinfire, the small box one, why am I blanking on it right now? The Kinfire Delve, that one. That was one of my favorite small box cooperative games of last year. I put it on my top 2-player games. I put it on my top cooperative games. Just a really cool, you were delving through the deck, working together to beat bad guys sort of stuff. Well, Kinfire Council, it's a much bigger game. This is a big box game. There's a bunch of worker placement in it, and you are building up the city, trying to build these lighthouses that will help you. But one of the coolest things about the game, the thing that really caught my attention about it, is that there is a cult in the game. And so the cult will be earning points in the game as well. And if ever the cult wins, the player in last place actually wins the game. And so there becomes this interesting point in the game where you're like, I don't think I'm going to win this. I'm going to start helping the cult more. I'm going to start trying to push the cult up in points. I'm going to start giving the cult benefits. And so I just think that's a really cool thing where nobody likes feeling out of it in a game, right? You don't want to feel like, oh man, there's 45 minutes to play and I know I'm not going to win. That sucks. But this, if you get to that point where you're like, man, I'm in last place by a lot right now, time to flip that switch and start working for the cult right now. And I just think that's going to keep everybody invested in the game, because there you can either win by having the most or you can win by having the least, depending on how the cult does in the game. And that just really intrigues me about Kinfire Council. So again, that one is coming to crowdfunding soon, and then will come out in 2025. But it is worth checking out for sure. And then the last game I'll talk about from GAMA Expo is the game Arcs from Leader Games. This one should come out, have an early release at Gen Con, and then hit retail around October. Arcs, one of the cool things they're doing, they are releasing just a box for the game. You can just have the game and you're going to play the game and have a great time playing the game. You can also buy an additional box that turns the game into a campaign game. You can make it a standalone game or a campaign game depending on what type of games you like. I'm much more of a standalone gamer myself because I have trouble getting the same people back to the table, so I'm really excited that that exists here and I don't have to add all the campaign elements to it if I don't want to. One of the cool things about Arcs is there's a big board, but the things you are doing on the board are driven by a trick-taking mechanism from the cards you're playing. If you are playing the lowest card, you are getting more movement on the board, and that movement will help you do more things on the board. But you're also going to lose the trick. If you play a higher card, you're going to get less movement on the board, but you are going to grab the initiative in the game. And the initiative is going to help you decide sort of what matters in the game. What are we scoring for? What do we want to accomplish? And so there's just a really interesting decision of, do I want to win this trick? Do I want to lose this trick? At what times do I want to do those certain things to help me drive my actions on the board? You know, if you're constantly losing tricks, you're doing a bunch of stuff, but maybe you're doing stuff that doesn't matter. And so you have to keep that in mind as you're playing through the game. I just think it sounds like a really cool, unique engine for a game. The things that you are doing, the decisions you're making are driven by this sort of trick-taking aspect to it, but then there's still it's not just a trick-taking game. There's a big board, there's a lot of stuff to do on the board, and so just feels unique and cool for sure. I considered that one for the most innovative as well, just because I like the stuff that it's doing. So those are 13 upcoming games that I saw at GAMA Expo. All of those games they're ones I want to play through again for sure, all of them. I hope some of those sounded cool to you as well. If you have any questions about them, feel free to put it in the comments. I'll get back to you and answer whatever questions I can about these games. Thanks so much for joining me, everybody. Hope you're having a lot of fun playing games out there. Thank you for liking and subscribing and all that sort of stuff. It really does help the channel and help me grow and all that sort of stuff. So thanks again, everybody. I'm Grant with Grant's Game Rex.